Hi guys, today I'm going to be building, painting and weathering one of Tamiya's older kits, which is this personnel carrier truck. According to Scalemates, this kit was originally released in 1978 and there have been a few little updates to it since then, but essentially this is the same kit now as it was back then. One of the additions is this sprue of German equipment, which as far as I can tell is basically the same as the Tamiya German weapons set, which is quite a useful inclusion. The box art suggests either German grey or German grey with a white winter camo over the top. I do quite like the idea of the winter camo, but the figures which are included, that's the driver and two passengers, are both in summer uniform, so I'm not quite sure what I'll do about that. Despite being an old kit, this still has the trademark Tamiya quality, so the fit is really good throughout, and you might just see a few things like a little bit of flash or some seam lines that need tidying up. The suspension arms are fairly easy to build, you just have to make sure that you put them in the right way round, because there's a subtle difference between top and bottom. There's a reasonable amount of detail on the underside of the truck, especially considering that it won't really get seen. So we have the transmission here, for example. And this is the completed chassis for the truck, and you can see it lays nice and flat on the table, there's no warping, there's no difficulty here getting it to sit down properly. Moving on to the cab, there were a couple of ejector pins which needed filling and sanding, but apart from that nothing significant. And in the cab these two pieces fit in for the seat, but because they are painted a different colour I left those out until the end. The wheels were fairly easy to construct and had just a seam line around them which needed to be removed. And they attach with poly caps, which means they can still rotate. The only slight gap I found was here attaching the two front pieces. The shape doesn't seem to match up very well and that gap had to be filled. The joins for these pieces were all on the inside, which enables you to just put them together and then just dollop some glue on in an area where it won't be seen. And at this point I decided to start painting before putting all the major pieces together. So I gave the chassis a coat of German grey, painted the tyres black with Vallejo paint, and then I went through my standard 3 colours for painting rust on the exhaust. These are all Vallejo model colour. The first is a saddle brown kind of colour, and then I added some dabs of orange. And then finally I added a very thin brown paint over the top to bring it all together. For the upper body work, I wanted to try a paint distressing technique which I first tried in my Russian Object 279 tank. As you can see here, the coat of German grey is nice enough, but it's very smooth, very flat. So I gave it a coat of AK Interactive 1 FX, and then I gave it another coat on top of that of a lighter German grey colour with a couple of extra drops of white paint in it. And the idea is to give the paint a distressed look, just like you do normal chipping. So by using some water to soak through the top layer of paint, we can dissolve the Worn Effects liquid. The top layer, which is the lighter layer, will come away, and hopefully that will reveal the darker layer in patches, which gives a kind of multi-toned effect. You can just about see that now on the driver's right there on the bonnet. So at this stage I felt that the technique was working okay, but the effect wasn't brilliant. And really these patches, I'd made them a little bit too big. I wanted a much finer texture than this. It's a start, but it's not the end result I was looking for. So what I did was give the entire piece a coat of hairspray this time, rather than the Worn Effects, and then another coat of the light German grey. And you can see here with a little bit less water, a slightly smaller brush, and I think, to be honest, the hairspray making a difference as well. I was getting the effect I wanted a bit better. And there, I was quite happy with that. That looks to me a bit like faded, flaking, sun-bleached paint. And of course it's got quite high contrast right now, but by the time it's weathered and varnished later, it will tone itself down a bit. I dry brushed some metallic grey onto the anti-skid parts of the floor. And moving on to the back wooden area of the truck, I painted everything in a light grey to represent the wood. I can't actually remember what light grey that was right now, but it was some light grey. And then I used my standard rust colours, like I did on the exhaust, to go over the metal pieces. So the saddle brown and then the orange on top, to simulate rust. And then after that I gave the grey areas a sand with some quite low grit sandpaper. This was about 200 or 400 I think. I also played around with some dark brown and black washes over this wood just to try to vary the colour a little bit. And then it was time to put the pieces together to construct the rear of the truck. The pieces that are grey here are either covered up completely by other pieces, or they're going to be painted in that kind of khaki canvas colour later on. The back of the truck was painted the same as the rest, so I gave a coat of the Worn Effects and then put German grey over the top, and then used water and various tools to scratch away some of that paint to reveal the chipped wood or to reveal the rusty metal underneath. And this might be user error on my part, but I found that the Worn Effects gave a slightly strange effect. You can see where it wears away, it's removing the top layer paint in sort of circular spots, which doesn't look very much like wear and tear to me. I could get around that a little bit by using a stiffer brush and really scraping away at those round parts. But I still feel after this model that I don't think I will use the Worn Effects again. I think I'll stick to hairspray in the future. And the floor in the back here, of course, is where most traffic would be, either foot traffic or things being dragged in and out. So I went straight through to the wood for the majority of that. And then it was just a case of constructing the seats. These look way too clean right now, but I did dirty them up later on. And then there are quite a few pieces on this kit which need to be added at the end because they'll get knocked off otherwise. I believe these pieces here are used to measure the width of the truck. And obviously the wing mirrors, lights and so on. So this is the final truck before weathering. It hasn't had the matte coat yet. Then I moved on to adding some mud splatters. So I took two different pigments. This is asphalt road dirt, mixed it with a little bit of odourless thinner, and then just flicked it onto the truck using a wooden skewer. And when doing this, I made sure that I did it from below and in front of the truck, which is the direction that the mud would be coming from. And you can see here, by the time I did the second side, the first side was dried. Once that had dried, I used the same technique again, but with a slightly lighter colour brown pigment, because obviously mud has more than one colour. And here is the final result. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. One of the nice things about these older Tamiya kits is that they're quite cheap, and so you can experiment with new effects and so on without being too worried about writing off an expensive kit. I do have a few kits in progress at the moment, but I haven't actually got anything finished yet, which is why there was no video last week. But at the moment I have the Tamiya quad gun tractor, the Takom Jagdtiger, and a couple of British aircraft, all in various stages of painting and weathering. So one of those, probably the Jagdtiger, will be ready for next week's video. So until then, thank you for watching and have a good weekend.